In the heart of ordinary America, a monster was taking shape, the 1970s. An era draped in the warm hues of nostalgia, where station wagons lined suburban driveways, and the scent of freshly cut grass hung heavy in the air. Neighborhoods buzzed with the easy camaraderie of block parties. Kids played freely until dusk, and front doors remained unlocked. A testament to an almost childlike faith in the goodness of people. It was a time when the American dream felt not just attainable, but inevitable. A birthright bestowed upon those who worked hard and played by the rules. Homes, often adorned with vibrant shag carpets and avocado green appliances, served as sanctuaries, safe havens from the world's troubles. Families gathered around wood-paneled television sets to watch the evening news, blissfully unaware of the darkness creeping ever closer. The concept of a predator lurking within their own community seemed like a far-fetched plot from a late-night movie, a nightmare that couldn't possibly bleed into their reality. This sense of security, this unwavering belief in the inherent decency of their neighbors, proved to be a fertile ground for deception. The very fabric of this idyllic existence provided a flawless camouflage, a mask of normalcy behind which unspeakable horrors could fester undetected. The naivete of the era, the ingrained trust in authority and outward appearances, inadvertently created a blind spot, a vulnerability that a master manipulator could exploit with chilling precision. The American dream, with its emphasis on upward mobility and social acceptance, inadvertently provided a blueprint for someone like Wayne Gacy. He understood the power of appearances, the importance of fitting in, of projecting an image of success and respectability. He meticulously crafted a persona that mirrored the aspirations of his community, becoming the embodiment of the hardworking, civic-minded neighbor everyone admired. He was the man who hosted barbecues, who volunteered at local charities, who entertained children with his clown act. He was, in essence, the perfect neighbor, the kind of person you'd trust with your kids, the kind of person you'd invite into your home without a second thought. This carefully constructed facade allowed him to operate with impunity, to move through the world shielded by a cloak of credibility. But beneath the manicured lawns and friendly smiles, something sinister was festering, a darkness that would shatter the illusion of safety forever. A creeping unease began to permeate the seemingly perfect facade of suburban life. Whispers circulated, anxieties grew, and a sense of foreboding settled over the community like a shroud. It was a feeling that something was amiss, that the world wasn't quite as safe as it seemed, that the monsters weren't just confined to the movie screen. The idyllic facade began to crack, revealing the unsettling truth that evil could lurk in the most unexpected places, hidden behind the most ordinary of faces. The disappearances of young men and boys, initially dismissed as runaways or youthful indiscretion, began to mount, casting a long shadow over the community. Each missing person report chipped away at the collective sense of security, fueling the growing unease and transforming the once peaceful streets into a landscape of fear and suspicion. Parents held their children closer, teenagers walked home in groups, and neighbors eyed each other with a newfound apprehension. The carefree innocence of the 1970s began to fade, replaced by a gnawing awareness that something was terribly wrong. The realization that a predator could be living among them, masquerading as a friend, a neighbor, a community leader, was a terrifying prospect that shattered the illusion of safety forever. The growing unease was palpable, a silent scream trapped within the confines of meticulously maintained homes. The scent of freshly cut grass no longer carried the same comforting aroma. Instead, it mingled with the stench of fear and uncertainty. The laughter of children playing in the streets was now punctuated by moments of hushed silence, a stark reminder of the young lives that had vanished without a trace. The American dream, once a symbol of hope and opportunity, now felt tainted, tarnished by the knowledge that it could be so easily twisted and manipulated. The very ideals that had defined their community, the values of trust, neighborliness, and unwavering faith in the goodness of humanity, had been weaponized, used to conceal unimaginable horrors. What secret was hiding in plain sight? And who was the man behind the mask? The man who could effortlessly charm and deceive, who could seamlessly blend into the fabric of suburban life while harboring a darkness that defied comprehension. The man who would become known as the Killer Clown, a name that would forever be etched in the annals of true crime, a chilling reminder that evil can wear many faces, and that sometimes The most dangerous monsters are the ones who hide in plain sight. John Wayne Gacy wasn't born a monster, but his life was a tapestry woven with threads of abuse, rejection, and a desperate need for control. Growing up in a household dominated by a physically and emotionally abusive father, Gacy learned early on how to mask his true feelings, how to project an image of strength and compliance to avoid his father's wrath. The constant barrage of criticism and belittlement eroded his self-esteem, leaving him with a deep-seated sense of inadequacy and a burning desire for validation. His childhood was marked by social isolation and a struggle to fit in. He was often bullied and ridiculed by his peers, further fueling his feelings of alienation and resentment. He sought refuge in fantasy, creating elaborate scenarios in his mind where he was powerful, respected, and in control. These fantasies became a coping mechanism, a way to escape the harsh realities of his life and to compensate for his perceived shortcomings. As he grew older, Gacy developed a talent for manipulating others, for reading their emotions and exploiting their vulnerabilities. He learned how to charm and disarm, how to gain people's trust and use them to his advantage. This ability to manipulate became his most potent weapon, allowing him to navigate the world with a deceptive ease and to conceal the darkness that lurked within. His early adulthood was marked by a series of petty crimes and brushes with the law, warning signs that were often dismissed or overlooked. He was arrested for homosexual activity and theft, offenses that were considered relatively minor at the time. These early transgressions, however, revealed a pattern of disregard for social norms and a willingness to break the law to satisfy his own desires. Despite his criminal behavior, Gacy managed to maintain a facade of normalcy, holding down jobs, marrying, and becoming involved in community activities. He was a skilled chameleon, adapting to different social situations and projecting the image that was most likely to gain him acceptance and approval. This ability to compartmentalize his life, to separate his public persona from his private self, was a key factor in his ability to evade detection for so long. He possessed an uncanny ability to compartmentalize his life, creating airtight compartments within his psyche that prevented his dark impulses from contaminating his public image. He could seamlessly transition from being the friendly, jovial Pogo the clown to the cold, calculating predator without a flicker of recognition in his eyes. This duality was both terrifying and mesmerizing, a testament to his mastery of deception and his ability to control his own emotions. Gacy's move to the Chicago suburb of Norwood Park in the early 1970s marked a turning point in his life. He saw it as an opportunity to start fresh, to leave his past behind and to reinvent himself as a successful businessman and respected member of the community. He quickly established a construction company, Gacy Construction, and began to build a reputation as a reliable and hardworking contractor. He immersed himself in local politics, becoming a precinct captain and actively campaigning for Democratic candidates. He joined the local JCs, a civic organization dedicated to community service, and volunteered his time for various charitable causes. He even revived his clown persona, performing as Pogo the Clown at children's hospitals, parades, and community events. In Norwood Park, Gacy found the perfect environment to flourish. The community was welcoming and trusting, eager to embrace newcomers who were willing to contribute to the common good. He quickly became a fixture in the neighborhood, attending block parties, hosting barbecues, and always offering a helping hand to his neighbors. He was, in all outward appearances, the epitome of the American dream, a self-made man who had achieved success through hard work and dedication. But beneath the surface, the darkness continued to fester. The move to Norwood Park did not erase his past. It simply provided him with a new stage on which to act out his twisted fantasies. The community's trust and acceptance only emboldened him, fueling his sense of invincibility and reinforcing his belief that he could get away with anything. The disappearances began subtly, almost a young man here, a teenage boy there. Initially, they were dismissed as runaways, kids who had simply grown tired of their lives and decided to seek adventure elsewhere. The police investigations were perfunctory, hampered by a lack of resources and a prevailing attitude that these were simply cases of youthful indiscretion. But as the number of missing persons began to climb, a sense of unease began to permeate the community. Parents grew increasingly concerned, warning their children about the dangers of talking to strangers and urging them to stay close to home. The carefree innocence of the 1970s began to erode, replaced by a gnawing fear that something sinister was lurking in their midst. The families of the missing young men and boys were left to grapple with a unique kind of torment. They were caught in a limbo of uncertainty, unable to grieve because they didn't know for sure that their loved ones were dead, yet unable to move on because they had no idea where they were or if they would ever see them again. They plastered the town with missing person posters. Organized search John Wayne Gacy. The name itself evokes a chilling unease, a stain on the fabric of American suburbia. He was a man of contradictions, a walking paradox, draped in the guise of normalcy. To understand the horror he inflicted, we must first attempt to understand the man he presented to the world. Picture him, a large, affable man with a ready smile and a booming laugh. He possessed a natural charisma, an ability to connect with people on a superficial level that masked the darkness within. He was ambitious, driven to succeed in business, a man who craved the approval of others. He ran a successful construction company, often employing young men from the local community. He was active in local politics, even having his picture taken with First Lady Rosalind Carter. To many, he was the epitome of the American dream. A self-made man who had pulled himself up by his bootstraps. Gacy had an uncanny knack for ingratiating himself with people. He was a joiner, a member of numerous clubs and organizations. He was always willing to lend a hand, to volunteer his time for charitable causes. He was particularly fond of entertaining children, and it was this fondness that led him to create his alter ego, Pogo the Clown. Dressed in brightly colored costumes, with a painted smile plastered across his face, Pogo became a fixture at local parades, hospitals, and children's parties. He twisted balloons into whimsical shapes, performed silly magic tricks, and brought laughter to the faces of countless children. He relished the attention, the adoration, the feeling of being liked. But beneath the surface of this jovial, successful man lurked a darker truth. A need for control simmered within him, a desire to dominate and manipulate those around him. He had a temper, a simmering anger that could erupt without warning. Those who knew him well spoke of his volatile moods, his tendency to hold grudges, his manipulative behavior. He was a master of deception, able to present a charming facade while concealing his true nature. There were whispers, of course. Rumors of past indiscretions, of questionable business dealings, of a troubled past. But these whispers were often dismissed, attributed to jealousy or misunderstanding. After all, how could such a successful, well-liked man be capable of anything truly evil? Gacy had a history of manipulative behavior, often using guilt or intimidation to get his way. He craved power and control, and he was adept at exploiting the vulnerabilities of others. He carefully cultivated his image, meticulously crafting a persona that would shield him from suspicion. He was a man of secrets, a master of disguise. He compartmentalized his life, carefully separating his public persona from his private demons. To the outside world, he was a successful businessman, a friendly neighbor, and a beloved clown. But behind closed doors, a different story was unfolding. A story of hidden desires, of suppressed rage, of unspeakable acts. He was a walking contradiction, a man who could inspire both laughter and fear. He was a puzzle, a riddle wrapped in an enigma. How could one man embody such extreme contradictions? How could someone who brought joy to children also be capable of such unspeakable cruelty? The duality was stark, almost unbelievable. One moment, he would be entertaining children as Pogo the Clown. The next, he would be engaging in acts of violence and depravity. It was as if two separate personalities inhabited the same body, each unaware of the other's existence. He lived a double life, a carefully constructed facade that allowed him to operate in plain sight. He was a predator disguised as a friend, a monster hiding in plain sight. He exploited the trust of others, using his charm and charisma to lure his victims into his web. He was a chameleon, adapting to his surroundings, mirroring the expectations of those around him. He knew how to play the role of the friendly neighbor, the successful businessman, the caring volunteer. He was a master of manipulation, able to convince others that he was someone he was not. He was a paradox, a contradiction, a walking enigma. He was John Wayne Gacy, the man behind the smile. But what events shaped this man, and how did he become capable of such unspeakable acts? The answer lies in the shadows of his past, in the hidden corners of his psyche, and the dark secrets that he guarded so fiercely. We must delve deeper, peel back the layers of deception, and confront the chilling truth about the man who became known as the Killer Clown. Even in his younger years, long before the clown makeup and the sinister secrets buried beneath a suburban home, John Wayne Gacy was a figure wrestling with inner demons. His childhood, often painted with broad strokes of normalcy, held subtle fractures that hinted at the darkness to come. He wasn't always the confident, boisterous figure he later presented to the world. There were whispers of bullying, moments of feeling like an outsider, struggles to measure up to the expectations of a stern, often disapproving father. These weren't excuses for his later actions, but pieces of a complex puzzle, clues scattered along a path that led to unimaginable horror. What if someone had pieced them together sooner? Before the world knew John Wayne Gacy as a monster, he was simply John Gacy, a young man grappling with life's challenges, making mistakes, and, crucially, facing the consequences. During the 1960s, Gacy's path took a turn that foreshadowed the darkness within. There were brushes with the law, early offenses that, in hindsight, screamed for attention. These weren't the actions of a hardened criminal mastermind, but rather missteps, poor choices, and troubling incidents that, at the time, were often dismissed or minimized. One such incident involved Gacy's involvement in a homosexual act, which led to his first arrest and conviction. In the 1960s, societal attitudes toward homosexuality were vastly different from today. Such an offense carried a heavy stigma and legal ramifications, leading to Gacy's imprisonment. This event marked a significant turning point in his life, exposing a hidden aspect of his identity and setting in motion a chain of events that would contribute to his descent. It's crucial to understand the context of the time, where societal pressures and prejudices played a significant role in shaping Gacy's experiences and potentially his future actions. This early legal trouble served as a stark warning sign, a red flag that, unfortunately, flew largely unnoticed by a society, perhaps unwilling or unequipped to recognize the potential for future danger. It's a sobering reminder of how easily we can dismiss early indicators of deviant behavior, often attributing them to youthful indiscretions or isolated incidents. What responsibility does society bear when it fails to recognize and address these early warning signs? After serving time for his early offenses, Gacy made a pivotal decision. He would leave his past behind and seek a fresh start. He chose Illinois as his destination, a new landscape, a new community, a new opportunity to reinvent himself. Illinois represented a clean slate, a chance to escape the shadow of his past mistakes and build a new life, free from the judgment and scrutiny he had previously faced. This move to Illinois highlights a fundamental aspect of society: our inherent belief in second chances. We, as a society, often extend a hand to those who have stumbled, offering them the opportunity to redeem themselves and contribute positively to the community. It's a testament to our collective hope for rehabilitation and the potential for change within individuals. But what happens when that second chance is abused? When the opportunity for redemption is squandered in the most horrific way imaginable? Illinois offered Gacy anonymity, a place where he could shed his old skin and present a new persona to the world. He embraced this opportunity, immersing himself in the community, building relationships, and cultivating an image of respectability. He became a businessman, a volunteer, a seemingly upstanding member of society. It was a masterful performance, a carefully constructed facade that concealed the darkness lurking beneath. But here's the question that lingers. Could Gacy truly escape the darkness within? Could he genuinely leave his past behind? Or was he destined to repeat the patterns of deception and violence that had marked his earlier years? Was his move to Illinois a genuine attempt at redemption, or simply a strategic maneuver to find a new hunting ground, a place where he could more easily conceal his true nature? This question hangs heavy in the air, a chilling reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that the most monstrous acts can be perpetrated by those who appear the most ordinary. Gacy's ability to blend into society, to cultivate an image of normalcy and trustworthiness, is perhaps one of the most disturbing aspects of his story. It speaks to the human capacity for deception and the ease with which we can be manipulated by those who appear to be our friends and neighbors. How many other monsters are hiding in plain sight, cloaked in the guise of normalcy, waiting for the opportunity to strike? His move to Illinois wasn't just a geographical change. It was a calculated step in a sinister game. He wasn't simply seeking a new life. He was actively constructing a false identity, a mask that would allow him to operate with impunity. He understood the power of appearances, the importance of cultivating trust, and the ease with which people are willing to believe what they see on the surface. This period of Gacy's life serves as a chilling case study in the dangers of complacency, the risks of taking appearances at face value, and the importance of remaining vigilant, even in the most seemingly idyllic communities. It's a reminder that evil can lurk anywhere, and that we must be willing to look beneath the surface, to question our assumptions, and to recognize the warning signs, however subtle they may be. As Gacy settled into his new life in Illinois, the seeds of his future crimes were already being sown. He was laying the groundwork for a reign of terror that would shock the nation and forever shatter the illusion of suburban tranquility. The question remains, what seemingly innocuous choices, what seemingly insignificant moments paved the way for the horrors to come? What could have been done differently to prevent the tragedy that unfolded? Gacy's story is not just a tale of one man's monstrous acts. It's a reflection of society's failures, its blind spots, and its willingness to accept appearances over reality. It's a call to vigilance, a reminder that we must never underestimate the power of deception, and that we must always be willing to confront the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly ordinary lives. The move to Illinois provided Gacy with a canvas upon which he could paint a new reality, one where he was the master of his own narrative. But as we all know, reality has a way of seeping through the cracks, and the darkness within Gacy would eventually stain everything he touched. What was it about Illinois that allowed him to thrive, to cultivate his sinister persona, and to evade detection for so long? Was it the anonymity of the suburbs, the trusts placed in community leaders, or simply a tragic confluence of circumstances? Illinois offered Gacy not just a second chance, but a stage upon which he could perform his twisted theater of cruelty. The question is, what role did the audience play in allowing the performance to continue, unnoticed, for so long? What can we learn from this tragic chapter in American history to ensure that such horrors are never repeated? Could Gacy have been stopped? Were there missed opportunities, overlooked clues, or societal failures that allowed him to continue his reign of terror? These are the questions that haunt us, the questions that demand answers, and the questions that serve as a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human heart. The early 1970s, in Norwood Park Township, a suburb just northwest of Chicago, was a portrait of American aspiration. Neat rows of houses with manicured lawns, the comforting aroma of backyard barbecues, and children playing freely in the streets. It was a place where neighbors knew each other, where trust was a given, and where the biggest worry was usually the rising cost of groceries. But beneath this veneer of idyllic suburban life, something sinister was beginning to stir, a darkness that would soon shatter the community's sense of security forever. Into this seemingly ordinary world stepped John Wayne Gacy, a man who appeared to embody the American dream. He was ambitious, charismatic, and seemingly dedicated to his community. After arriving in the area, he quickly established a successful construction business, Gacy Construction, showcasing his entrepreneurial spirit. He wasn't just building homes, he was building a reputation. Gacy actively sought to integrate himself into the fabric of local society. He joined the local Chamber of Commerce, attended community events, and even dipped his toes into the world of politics, becoming a precinct captain. He was the kind of guy who remembered your name, asked about your family, and always seemed ready with a hearty laugh and a helping hand. He was, by all accounts, a model citizen, but it was his volunteer work that truly cemented his image as a pillar of the community. Gacy frequently donned a clown costume, transforming himself into Pogo the Clown, or sometimes Patches, for local hospitals, charity events, and children's parties. With his painted smile, bright wig, and balloon animals, Pogo brought joy and laughter to countless children. He was a regular fixture at parades and festivals, a beloved figure who seemed to genuinely care about bringing happiness to others. The irony, of course, is almost unbearable. The man behind the cheerful facade was harboring unimaginable darkness. This clown persona, this symbol of innocence and joy, served as a mask, a carefully crafted disguise that allowed Gacy to gain access to the most vulnerable members of society. Children trusted Pogo and parents trusted him too. They saw him as a harmless entertainer, a friendly face in a world that could sometimes feel overwhelming. But as Gacy continued to solidify his place in the community, a disturbing trend began to emerge. Young men, often teenagers or young adults, started disappearing. A shadow of fear fell across the community as young men began to vanish without a trace. But as the months passed and the number of missing persons grew, a sense of unease began to permeate the air. Families were left in agonizing limbo, desperately searching for their loved ones. They plastered missing person posters around town, organized search parties, and pleaded with local authorities for help. The police, however, struggled to find any leads. There were no witnesses, no signs of foul play, just empty spaces where these young men once stood. The disappearances cast a pall over the community, shattering the illusion of safety and security. Parents became more protective of their children, warning them about strangers and urging them to be careful. Neighbors eyed each other with suspicion, wondering if the person next door might be hiding something. The once trusting atmosphere of Norwood Park Township was slowly eroding, replaced by a growing sense of paranoia and fear. Among those who vanished were individuals like John Butkovich, a young man with a bright future ahead of him, and Darrell Sampson, an aspiring artist. Each disappearance left a hole in the community, a void that could never be truly filled. As the disappearances mounted, whispers began to circulate. Some wondered if a serial killer was preying on the area's youth. Others dismissed such notions as outlandish and sensational, but the fear remained, a constant undercurrent beneath the surface of everyday life. Throughout this period, John Wayne Gacy continued to play his part, both as a respected businessman and as the beloved Pogo the Clown. He attended community meetings, offered words of comfort to the families of the missing, and continued to entertain children at parties and events. He was, to all outward appearances, the epitome of normalcy, a man who could never be suspected of such heinous crimes. But how could someone so seemingly normal be connected to these disappearances? The answer was more terrifying than anyone could imagine, and the truth, hidden beneath the mask of Pogo the Clown, would soon be revealed in the most horrifying way possible. What was happening in the shadows of this seemingly perfect suburban community would soon shock the entire nation. The mid-1970s in suburban Chicago carried a growing unease. It was a subtle shift at first, almost imperceptible. A growing sense of dread settled over the community, like a chilling fog. Young men were vanishing. One week, a local high school student disappeared after football practice. The next, a part-time construction worker didn't return home from a job. Each disappearance was a thread pulled from the fabric of the community, unraveling the sense of security that had once been taken for granted. Families plastered telephone poles with flyers, their hopeful smiles masking a growing despair. Late-night vigils illuminated neighborhood streets, prayers mingling with the chilling autumn wind. The local news carried stories of desperate parents pleading for any information, their voices cracking with anguish. These weren't just statistics. They were sons, brothers, friends. Their absence left gaping holes in the lives of those who loved them. And then there was Gacy. His house, at 8213 Summerdale Avenue, became a source of whispered anxieties. The constant remodeling seemed never-ending. Hammers echoed late into the night, punctuated by the drone of power tools. Neighbors noticed unusual odors emanating from the property, a heavy, sickly sweet smell that hung in the air, clashing with the fresh-cut grass and blooming petunias. Some recalled Gacy's increasingly strange behavior, an unnerving intensity in his eyes, a forced joviality that felt unsettling. He would stare a little too long, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. One neighbor, a retired schoolteacher named Mrs. Kuzak, remembered a conversation with Gacy about his crawl space. He had mentioned how deep it was, how much work it took to reinforce the foundation. She recalled him chuckling nervously, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. Another neighbor, a young man named Tom, recalled Gacy offering him a job on one of his construction projects. He declined, feeling an inexplicable sense of unease around Gacy. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but something felt wrong. Despite these unsettling signs, Gacy remained largely above suspicion. He was, after all, a pillar of the community, a successful businessman, a cheerful entertainer, a man who dressed up as a clown for children's parties. He was the kind of person you'd expect to see at a neighborhood barbecue, not a suspect in a string of disappearances. The 1970s were a different time, a time when people were more trusting, more willing to give others the benefit of the doubt. Societal biases played a role, too. The victims were often young men, some of whom frequented gay bars or worked in less conventional jobs. These factors, combined with Gacy's carefully constructed facade, allowed him to slip through the cracks. Some have questioned if the police were as thorough as they could have been. Did they dismiss early leads because of preconceived notions about the victims? Did they underestimate Gacy because of his seemingly harmless public persona? In a world before widespread DNA testing and advanced forensic techniques, investigations relied heavily on eyewitness testimony and circumstantial evidence. Gacy was a master manipulator, adept at weaving intricate lies and exploiting the trust of those around him. The disappearances continued, casting a long shadow over the community. Fear and suspicion festered, poisoning relationships and eroding the sense of unity. The families of the missing endured unimaginable pain, clinging to hope while battling the gnawing fear that their loved ones were gone forever. The police appeared powerless to stop the growing wave of disappearances. The walls were closing in. The scent grew stronger, the lies more elaborate. The cracks in Gacy's carefully constructed mask grew wider. But how long could he keep his secrets buried beneath the floorboards? How long could he outrun the truth that was slowly, inexorably catching up to him? The truth was hidden in plain sight, concealed beneath layers of lies and deception. But how long could Gacy keep his secrets buried? October 1978. Des Plaines, Illinois. The crisp autumn air carried a sense of foreboding that belied the season's beauty. The leaves were turning, painting the suburban landscape in hues of red and gold. But beneath that picturesque veneer, a darkness was stirring. A darkness that would soon shatter the community's sense of security. Robert Piest, a brighted 15-year-old, vanished without a trace. He was last seen on December 11th, after telling his mother he had a job interview at a local pharmacy, Nissan's Pharmacy, where John Wayne Gacy was doing some contracting work. Robert was hoping to earn some extra money for Christmas presents. He never came home. The disappearance of Robert Piest was different. It wasn't just another missing person case in a string of unsettling disappearances. Robert was young, well-liked, and had a close-knit family. His disappearance ignited a firestorm of concern and fear that gripped the entire community. It was a turning point. The Des Plaines Police Department, led by Detective Joe Kozenchak, immediately launched an investigation. The initial focus was on the pharmacy, and quickly, John Wayne Gacy's name surfaced. He was the last known person to have seen Robert. Gacy had offered Robert a job. Gacy, with his disarming charm and eagerness to cooperate, initially appeared to be a helpful witness. He readily answered the detective's questions, offering condolences to the Piest family. But something didn't quite add up. There were subtle inconsistencies in his story, small details that didn't align. Kozenchak and his team wanted to search Gacy's home. They felt it. They knew it, but obtaining a search warrant proved to be a bureaucratic nightmare. They needed concrete evidence, probable cause, something more than just a gut feeling. The local prosecutor hesitated, wary of the potential repercussions of a wrongful search. The police began surveillance of Gacy, watching his every move. They observed him coming and going from his ranch-style house at 8213 Summerdale Avenue, a seemingly ordinary home that concealed unimaginable secrets. They noted his interactions with neighbors, his clown performances at local hospitals, his seemingly normal life. As the days passed, the pressure mounted. The Piest family was desperate for answers. The community was on edge. The police knew they had to act, and act fast. The inconsistencies in Gacy's statements grew more glaring. He changed his story multiple times, offering conflicting accounts of his last interaction with Robert. Investigators discovered that Gacy had a history of violence and sexual assault, information that had been overlooked in the past. The pieces were starting to fall into place, painting a disturbing picture of the man behind the clown makeup. The police learned of Gacy's prior conviction for sodomy, a crime that had landed him in prison years before. The walls were closing in on Gacy, but would the police be able to uncover the truth before it was too late? The answer lay hidden within his house of secrets, and the clock was ticking. What could be inside that house? Leave your thoughts in the comments. The biting December wind whipped around the officers as they approached the single-story house on Summer Street. It wasn't just the cold that made them shiver. A palpable sense of dread hung in the air, thick and heavy, clinging to the neatly trimmed lawns and cookie-cutter facades of the Des Plaines neighborhood. This search, authorized by a Warren Hardwon, felt different. It wasn't just about finding Robert Piest. It was about confronting a darkness that had been festering, hidden in plain sight, for far too long. The house itself seemed to exhale a silent warning. Its normalcy was a grotesque mask, a deceptive shield, concealing unimaginable horrors. Inside, the air was stale, thick, with an unidentifiable odor that clung to the back of the throat. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind outside, seemed amplified, echoing the unspoken anxieties of the search team. The mundane details of a suburban home, family photos, half-finished meals, children's toys, felt jarring, a grotesque juxtaposition against the growing suspicion of unspeakable crimes. The initial search was methodical, room by room, closet by closet, but it was the crawl space beneath the house that held the chilling truth. As the officers began to excavate, the earth yielded its gruesome secrets. First, a bone, then another, then more. Skeletal remains, tangled in the cold earth, whispering stories of lives cut short. The air grew heavy with the stench of decay, a smell that would forever haunt the memories of those present. The officers, hardened by years on the force, struggled to maintain composure. The sheer scale of the discovery was overwhelming. This wasn't a single crime scene. It was a graveyard, a testament to a monstrous evil that had taken root in their community. Personal belongings were unearthed alongside the remains' wallets. Rings, fragments of clothing. Each item a poignant reminder of a life stolen, a family left in agonizing uncertainty. The realization dawned with sickening clarity. This was not just a missing person case. This was a mass murder investigation, unlike anything they had ever encountered. The weight of the discovery settled upon them, a crushing burden of responsibility. The world outside, with its Christmas lights and cheerful carols, seemed impossibly distant, a stark contrast to the horrific reality unfolding beneath their feet. The neatly manicured lawns and friendly waves of the neighbors now felt like a cruel charade, a testament to the chilling fact that evil can thrive in the most ordinary of places. As the sun began to set, casting long, ominous shadows across the scene, the search continued, each shovelful of earth revealing another layer of horror. The house on Summer Street had become a portal to a nightmare, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. What secrets were buried beneath Gacy's home, and what would they reveal about the darkness that lurked within him? The arrest came swiftly, a stark contrast to the years of calculated deception. Gacy, once a pillar of the Des Plaines community, was now a suspect, his facade of normalcy crumbling under the weight of mounting evidence. When confronted with the discoveries unearthed from beneath his house, he initially feigned ignorance, a practiced performance that quickly dissolved into a chillingly calm confession. It wasn't a torrent of remorse, but a detached recounting of unspeakable acts. He spoke of the victims, their ages, their final moments, with an unsettling lack of emotion, as if reciting a grocery list rather than acknowledging the lives he had extinguished. Investigators, hardened by years of facing the darkest corners of humanity, were shaken by Gacy's demeanor. His eyes, once twinkling with an artificial warmth as Pogo the Clown, now reflected a cold, empty void. He detailed the burial locations, not with hesitation, but with a precise recollection that spoke volumes about the meticulous planning he employed in his horrific crimes. Maps, meticulously drawn, revealed the extent of his depravity, each cross marking a life stolen, a family shattered. The victims' identities, slowly pieced together, painted a heartbreaking picture of lost potential and stolen futures. The revelations sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Seasoned detectives, accustomed to the grim realities of their profession, found themselves grappling with the sheer scale and brutality of Gacy's crimes. The meticulous nature of his planning, the cold-blooded execution of his acts, and the complete absence of empathy were deeply disturbing. The emotional toll was immense, not just for the investigators, but for the entire community. News of Gacy's confession spread like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of outrage across the nation. The image of a smiling clown, a symbol of childhood joy, twisted into a monstrous figure of unimaginable evil. The betrayal felt deeply personal, a violation of innocence that struck at the heart of American values. Families of the missing, who had clung to hope for years, now faced the devastating truth, their worst fears confirmed in the most horrific way imaginable. The grief was palpable, a collective mourning that united the nation in sorrow and anger. How could someone so deeply embedded in the community, someone who entertained children and volunteered his time, be capable of such unspeakable acts? The question echoed across the country, a desperate plea for understanding in the face of incomprehensible evil. The impact rippled outwards, sowing seeds of distrust and fear in communities across the country. The demand for justice was immediate and overwhelming. The public outcry was deafening, a unified voice demanding retribution for the lives lost. But could any punishment truly atone for the lives that Gacy had stolen? The Cook County Courthouse in 1980 was a pressure cooker. The air crackled with anticipation, fear, and a desperate yearning for justice. Every seat was filled, not just with lawyers and reporters, but with the ghosts of young men whose lives had been brutally cut short. The media circus outside was a frenzy, cameras flashing, reporters shouting, each vying for the latest morsel of information in a case that had gripped the nation. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with grief, the weight of unspoken sorrow pressing down on everyone present. Wayne Gacy, the man who had so expertly masked his monstrous nature, sat impassively as the trial began. His defense hinged on a plea of insanity, a desperate attempt to evade responsibility for the unimaginable horrors he had inflicted. The prosecution, however, meticulously laid out their case, painting a portrait of a man who, despite his outward was calculating, cunning, and fully aware of his actions. They presented evidence of Gacy's methodical planning, his attempts to cover his tracks, and his chillingly calm demeanor after the murders. The emotional heart of the trial lay with the testimonies of the victims' families. One by one, they took the stand, their voices trembling as they recounted the agonizing years of uncertainty, the endless searches, the fading hope that their sons, brothers, and husbands would ever return. A father spoke of the fishing trips he would never take with his son again. A mother clutched a photograph, her tears blurring the image of a smiling young man. Their pain was palpable, their grief a tangible presence in the courtroom, and it resonated deeply with the jury. The defense presented expert witnesses who argued that Gacy suffered from multiple personality disorder and other mental illnesses, attempting to portray him as a man driven by forces beyond his control. But the prosecution countered with their own experts, who testified that Gacy was a sociopath, fully aware of his actions and capable of distinguishing right from wrong. They argued that his clown persona was not a sign of madness, but a carefully constructed mask, a tool he used to disarm his victims and deflect suspicion. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Guilty. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted in a mixture of relief, anger, and sorrow. Gacy was sentenced to multiple death sentences, a symbolic gesture acknowledging the enormity of his crimes. The jury had spoken, but the debate over Gacy's sanity and the nature of evil would continue for years to come. Life on death row became an unexpected stage for Wayne Gacy. The man who buried secrets beneath his suburban home now found himself under constant scrutiny, his every action dissected and broadcast. He painted prolifically, churning out disturbing canvases, many featuring his clown persona, Hugo. These works, paradoxically, became collector's items, fueling a morbid fascination that both enraged and baffled the public. The Cook County Courthouse in 1980 was a pressure cooker. The air crackled with anticipation, fear, and a desperate yearning for justice. Every seat was filled, not just with lawyers and reporters, but with the ghosts of young men whose lives had been brutally cut short. The media circus outside was a frenzy, cameras flashing, reporters shouting, each vying for the latest morsel of information in a case that had gripped the nation. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with grief, the weight of unspoken sorrow pressing down on everyone present. Wayne Gacy, the man who had so expertly masked his monstrous nature, sat impassively as the trial began. His defense hinged on a plea of insanity, a desperate attempt to evade responsibility for the unimaginable horrors he had inflicted. The prosecution, however, meticulously laid out their case, painting a portrait of a man who, despite his outward was calculating, cunning, and fully aware of his actions. They presented evidence of Gacy's methodical planning, his attempts to cover his tracks, and his chillingly calm demeanor after the murders. The emotional heart of the trial lay with the testimonies of the victims' families. One by one, they took the stand, their voices trembling as they recounted the agonizing years of uncertainty, the endless searches, the fading hope that their sons, brothers, and husbands would ever return. A father spoke of the fishing trips he would never take with his son again. A mother clutched a photograph, her tears blurring the image of a smiling young man. Their pain was palpable, their grief a tangible presence in the courtroom, and it resonated deeply with the jury. The defense presented expert witnesses who argued that Gacy suffered from multiple personality disorder and other mental illnesses, attempting to portray him as a man driven by forces beyond his control. But the prosecution countered with their own experts, who testified that Gacy was a sociopath, fully aware of his actions and capable of distinguishing right from wrong. They argued that his clown persona was not a sign of madness, but a carefully constructed mask, a tool he used to disarm his victims and deflect suspicion. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Guilty. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted in a mixture of relief, anger, and sorrow. Gacy was sentenced to multiple death sentences, a symbolic gesture acknowledging the enormity of his crimes. The jury had spoken, but the debate over Gacy's sanity and the nature of evil would continue for years to come. Life on death row became an unexpected stage for John Wayne Gacy. The man who buried secrets beneath his suburban home now found himself under constant scrutiny, his every action dissected and broadcast. He painted prolifically, churning out disturbing canvases, many featuring his clown persona, Hugo. These works, paradoxically, became collector's items, fueling a morbid fascination that both enraged and baffled the public. The case also highlighted the critical need for better communication between law enforcement agencies. Gacy operated across multiple jurisdictions, and a lack of information sharing hindered the investigation for years. In the wake of the Gacy case, task forces and databases were created to facilitate the exchange of information between police departments and county lines, ensuring that patterns and connections wouldn't be missed again. Beyond law enforcement, the Gacy case sparked a renewed focus on victims' rights. Before Gacy, the legal system often prioritized the rights of the accused, sometimes at the expense of the victims and their families. The Gacy trial brought the immense suffering of the victims' families into the spotlight, leading to increased advocacy for victim support services, counseling, and legal representation. Support groups formed, offering a space for grieving families to connect, share their stories, and find solace in their shared experiences. The case remains a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. It forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about our society and our capacity for evil. But it also sparked important conversations about community safety, law enforcement, and the importance of supporting victims and their families. As we reflect on the Gacy case, let us not forget the names and faces of the young men whose lives were tragically cut short. Their stories serve as a call to action, reminding us to remain vigilant, to support those who are vulnerable, and to never forget the importance of justice. The Gacy case serves as a chilling reminder that darkness can reside where we least expect it, masked by familiarity and a disarming smile. He exploited the innocence of youth and the trust of a community, leaving behind a legacy of profound sorrow. The victims, stolen from their loved ones, deserve to be remembered not as statistics, but as individuals with dreams and futures tragically cut short. The ripple effects of Gacy's crimes extended far beyond the immediate families, fracturing a sense of security in suburban America. It forced a reassessment of how we perceive our neighbors, the strangers we encounter, and the potential for evil lurking beneath the surface of everyday life. This case compels us to look beyond the surface, to question the facades people present, and to recognize that appearances can be deceiving. Let this story serve as a call to vigilance, a reminder to remain aware of our surroundings, and to trust our instincts when something feels amiss. Encourage open communication with children and young adults, fostering an environment where they feel safe sharing their concerns. promote community involvement, and support networks that can help identify and address potential dangers before they escalate. The memory of John Wayne Gacy should not be one of morbid fascination, but rather a catalyst for proactive measures to protect the vulnerable and prevent similar tragedies from occurring. It is a reminder that justice, while served, cannot fully heal the wounds inflicted upon the victims' families and the collective consciousness of a nation. Let us honor the memory of those lost by remaining vigilant, fostering empathy, and working towards a society where such horrors are never repeated. Take a moment to reflect on this case and share your thoughts in the comments below. What lessons can we learn from the Gacy tragedy? What steps can we take to create safer communities? The conversation is crucial, and your voice matters.